So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session today. This is about a roundtable discussion and why quality matters in distance learning. And we have selected QM faculty on the call today, so thank you so much for joining us. And let's go ahead and get started. So our goal for this webinar is really for all the participants, either live or watching this recording, to gain those actionable strategies to contribute to and maintain high quality distance learning practices within our academic community here at UDC. Now let's just go over some of the controls for Zoom. Feel free, you can turn on your camera or unmute at any time of our webinar. Feel free to ask questions or contribute once I start asking those questions to all the faculty here on the call. You can also use that chat box, just click on that chat icon. And last but not least, let's go over the reactions for Zoom. So you may see this under the three dots that says more, but look for that little reactions button. Once you click on that, you're able to give a quick applause, a thumbs up, a heart, show me some love. If you want to click on those three dots in the corner, once you click on that, to change the skin tone, look at that little thumbs up icon in the lower right corner. You can go ahead and change the skin tone right there on Zoom. So this is a good practice for you and your students, really increases that inclusivity. So if you'd like to try it out, go ahead and give me a thumbs up or some love here. Makes me feel really good on a cold day. Thank you so much, Dr. Taraboletti. Thank you, Julian, Dr. Hunt. Excellent, Pat, Dr. Kingberry. You got it, right? So our agenda for today, we'll do a quick part one of an introduction to quality matters with Julian King. And then part two, I'll lead a faculty roundtable discussion on some questions about student engagement, accessibility, challenges, getting started tips for others that are pursuing their Quality Matters certification or applying the Quality Matters rubric course, right? And I'll go over also how to get started with that if you aren't already registered, because C.A.L will cover those fees for you if you are interested in pursuing this. So with that, I'll hand it off to Mr. King about what is the Quality Matters rubric.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, fellow colleagues, UDC community. So kind of diving deep into our QM rubric. The QM rubric, especially the training that it develops, the biggest piece about why we chose this and why we're using it going forward is that it uses the research-based practices so that we can ensure that we are building high-quality online and hybrid courses for our UDC students. And the big thing about it and the reason why we like it so much is that it really focuses on our alignment, the big picture about why we want to build our courses, what information we want our students to get, and how we make sure they successfully achieve those student learning outcomes. Specifically when it talks about learning objectives, making sure we're aligning our course objectives and our weekly module objectives. Our assessments, making sure our assessments are authentic, learner-centered, making sure that students are getting authentic experience when they're doing these assessments that will make sure they are preparing them for their next set of classes or for their future career. They're making sure that instructional materials are relevant and intentional, that we are not just using materials for the sake of it, but that we are using it to help students achieve a specific learning outcome, and that the activities and the interaction are intentional. We want students to be able to engage in these spaces. We know as we're shifting to more online and hybrid courses, we want to make sure that student engagement remains just as high as if it would be in a face-to-face space. And that the technology we're using, we have our UDC standards of technology and engagement, but they also have their own standards for course technology, and making sure that the course technology fits the class and fits the activities in which you are using, and making sure that it's just all intentional. And I think that's the biggest piece of it, is our alignment and our intention when we are building these courses for our students. And just getting started. So if you are interested in our QM rubric, as we have some of our wonderful faculty that have completed this QM training, if you're interested in this, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. This QM certification is a necessity when it comes to wanting to build distance learning courses in your program or in your school. So please, if you know anyone that's interested, or at any point throughout this webinar you become interested, please send all your questions to Fatma, and we will get you registered as soon as possible.
Excellent. And Julian, would you recommend for professors or faculty to do this when they have some extra time, or what is the time commitment for a course like this?
Well, I know our other faculty will speak to all of them having a different time commitment and what it took for them to complete it. But typically, it's a 2-week online asynchronous course. It is a bit intensive at some parts versus the other. I rarely say it takes about 14 hours to complete. But I think this is a great training, regardless whether you choose to build distance learning courses. It helps open your lens for how you are developing your courses, whether they're high flex or face to face, and you're using Blackboard as a hub. I think having this professional development and this training will help kind of push you in the right direction when it comes to building student-centered courses that help our students thrive. We know we have diverse learners, and we want to make sure we're providing them every opportunity to succeed.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much, Julian. And, I went through this course as well. And I think one of the really good benefits of it is you're interacting with other higher ed professionals or faculty. So you can also network and learn from them as well. Right? Yeah. Any questions for Julian? Thank you, Julian.
No problem. Thank you all.
So here are our recent Applying the Quality Matters rubric course graduates. So for those on the call here today that have joined us, feel free to go ahead and introduce yourself. You can tell us your name, your title, and how long you've been here at UDC. So let's start with Dr. King-Berry, if you don't mind.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arlene King-Berry, and I'm a professor in special education, and I have been here 20 years.
Excellent. Yeah, and Dr. King-Berry, it's been a pleasure to work with you. I know we worked extensively last summer for the FDR conference,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
And I see Dr. Hunt on the call. If you don't mind introducing yourself as well.
Hey, good afternoon. Good chilly afternoon, everyone. On the offside chats, you haven't run into me somewhere on campus. I'm Professor William Haff. I am over in the Digital Media Journalism and Film Production program. It's a bachelor's program in the Division of Arts and Humanities. I am very much a digital native. I have been using Blackboard since 2002. That's actually a little longer than I've been at UDC. I've been at UDC now since 2006. And I'm sort of passionate about using digital tools to teach because increasingly, my students are using digital production tools to make. So one of the neat things we get to do is kind of line these things up.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining the call. And Dr. Tara Belletti.
Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Tara Belletti. I am coming from the chemistry department, and I am the newbie here. I am just in my 3rd year here at UDC, but just loving the experiences that I have been able to have already so far, especially working with C.A.L.
Yeah, likewise, it's been a pleasure. So thank you so much. Grace.
Thanks, David. I also love working with C.A.L. And I'm also new here. So I've been here probably about 3 months now, maybe 4. And I'm working on course design and outcomes and assessment work, and can attest that this Quality Matters course is really informative and awesome. I learned so much. I think even as a new person coming on to C.A.L team, it really helped me kind of orient myself into this work. So I'm excited for this.
Thank you so much. And I just want to give a shout out to the others that couldn't join today, but we have Dr. Huron, Dr. Fair, Dr. Diaz, and Dr. Mazel Johnson that you see on the screen. So how we'll conduct this QM panel is feel free for the faculty that are on the call. I'll be asking some questions, and you can go ahead and unmute and give your response, right? So let's start with our course design and challenges types of questions. So my first question for everyone here is, how has your approach to course design evolved as a result of your engagement with Quality Matters? And what positive outcomes have you observed in terms of student experiences? So who would like to start with this one? Or I can call on someone. But thank you, Dr. King-Berry.
Let's start.
Yeah.
Really, my approach to course design has really evolved into ensuring that there's alignment with the outcomes, the objectives, through the activities, through the assessments, and not just alignment, but meaningful alignment that includes icons that students can reflect on or refer to in the course. Just having them listed. For example, I might have, I have what I call the snapshot of the module, and I will have an icon for that, which is accessible. And then I will have a symbol for the activity. So that's one of the things. And I find that it has really helped students to have a better idea of how to navigate the course. And they compliment me for that because they know what they have to do and they see it every week and they see it totally aligned with the objectives.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I know with the recent updates on Blackboard, right, you can add those icons, those visual cues for students that can really help to kind of connect those concepts in the course, right? Thank you. Dr. Han?
All right, yeah, so you see I was just popping back into existence here. How my approach to course design changed because of Quality Matters. And, you know, I took the first Quality Matters course like a very long time ago. And how that evolved my, my approach to course design is, you know, like so many people who get a PhD, I didn't study education. I know, obviously, Arlene King-Berry, she teaches in education. But I learned education from being a TA to college professors who'd been teaching for 40 years. So much of my original approach was, what do you make in that class? Like, it's usually focused on like making a video, writing a script, you know, editing a newspaper on the one side, like all your assignments. Then way over here, we have like the program level student learning outcomes. And like in between, here there be dragons, right? So what I think, I was just looking it up, I think it's General Standard 2 in Quality Matters. Like, no, you got to make sure you have to have some plausible way that those two connect. And hopefully they're measurable and time bound. And I think that was a framework or discipline that I got from the very first time I started using Quality Matters. Student experiences, it's interesting because in some ways, students tend to, like I was before I did Quality Matters, they're really interested in one, what grade are they going to get, but two, you know, what do I actually have to do, write, or make in this class? It is only in the last couple years where students have started asking to see rubrics. And generally, although not always, generally, that means that that particular student is taking the class seriously. Doesn't happen often, but when it does, I know that like some of this stuff at like the high level has filtered down into how undergraduate students see their education. And hopefully, if we continue doing this, it will more and more over time.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for that input. And Dr. Taraboletti, anything to add?
Yeah, I'm going to echo kind of both statements. I too wanted to bring up this idea of transitioning from academia into, or in your training of postdoc, et cetera. You don't really get as much training in the education area. And I think they're starting to try to address that now more, but I came in at that same level. And I think Dr. Hoff perfectly said it. There is a big gap. Here's our program level objectives. Here's what I know I want my students to learn, but in between there was nothing. So definitely the alignment and the objectives, being more intentional about that. I have changed that much more, thinking more about that and aligning the objectives program level back down to my individual courses. But I also will note that I have been thinking a lot more about accessibility after doing this. I am a sucker for digital art, digital media, and I loved making my courses pretty, we'll say. But sometimes that doesn't equate to accessible. You know, I would use colors and fonts and things like this, and that's not always accessible for all students in learning. So I've been kind of redesigning and thinking about that a bit more, leaning more into the making sure things are accessible, but you can still have and be pretty.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Dr. Hanf, anything to add?
Yeah, it's funny. You caught me sort of like suddenly thinking again. I think one of the other things that this has done is it kind of requires all of us to think bigger picture. It requires all of us to simultaneously be both faculty and administrators. We are, you basically have to wear a hat as a program coordinator, or an associate dean when you're designing a course to follow Quality Matters, because you need to be thinking much more broadly than you would if you were just banging out a syllabus. And I love banging out a good syllabus, but all of a sudden you need to think like really broadly. Some of the later standards, just as Dr. Terboletti was saying, things like accessibility, IT infrastructure, access to additional resources that were, as recently as maybe 8 or 10 years ago, not your problem if you were just faculty. And now, as you are working to not just deploy courses online, but build them, you are kind of working, you get a lot more hats, I think. Suddenly you're thinking more broadly, almost the way an administrator would, and maybe perhaps it's exactly the sort of thing you need to do if you want to evolve your career in that direction.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue to my next question about those challenges, right? So let's look at the second one. In the process of designing courses to meet Quality Matters standards, what notable challenges have you encountered, and what strategies have proven effective in overcoming them? Who would like to start with this one?
Okay, the easiest challenge is time. It simply takes more time to design a course to even get ready to go up for peer review. Like that is, and I retook the course, that is a deep into the specifics review of just about every aspect of the course. It is still so much easier to put together a syllabus and a couple assignment sheets and to teach a 14-week course. To get it, and so it's simply the time commitment. And the other challenge is one that happened when I compared what I did in the 20 teens with now, is that there is, there's link rot, I think, is another, taking an old course and getting it ready for new QM review. There's a lot of on the back end kind of IT stuff to do.
Yeah, thank you. And Dr. Kingberry?
Yes, I think for me, the biggest challenge is how to utilize QM standards with hybrid classes. You have student synchronously and asynchronously, and you have in-person. I have all of it. And it's been a challenge to coordinate it, but I find that I have to really focus on how to engage students that are not in the class, that are, taking it independently. And so I've had to develop different approaches to make sure that they are engaged with the other members through discussions, et cetera.
Yeah, and I know you're also teaching in the high flex modality, right?
Yeah,
so
flex,
that's just another one on top of it,
right.
That can offer those challenges. Dr. Terboletti, anything to add for this question?
Yeah, I think those were great points. I definitely agree with this wearing many hats and the time constraints. That was something I think was a big item for me. Just it does take more time, it takes more effort to really get these courses to meet those Quality Matters standards. I think another thing is aligning with other faculty members that maybe aren't working in the QM standards, and having those conversations about, if you're moving your courses forward in this way, how you're kind of working together to align course objectives and program objectives. Sometimes we edit program level objectives, and so those conversations have to be talked about, especially when you're thinking so rigidly about alignment in your course.
Yeah, definitely. And, the time commitment, especially up front, is a lot. But thinking about, you're committing that time at the beginning, but then it will get easier over time, especially if you're teaching the same course. repeatedly, or similar courses in the future. Yeah, so thank you everyone for your input with this. So let's move on to accessibility and balance. I know Dr. Terribility talked about this just a bit earlier, but let's go to the third question. Ensuring accessibility and inclusivity is crucial in online education. How do you incorporate these principles into your courses, and in what ways has Quality Matters supported you in addressing accessibility issues? Dr. Kingberry, do you want to speak on this?
Well, that this is my focus area. Of course, I'm a special educator, and I've also developed apps for accessibility. So I found that there were some areas that I needed support in, and that was, of course, dealing with color, the color checker, noting that, many people are colorblind. And so when you have photographs that have colors that have an emphasis, you have to be aware of that. Also, making sure that the hyperlinks have a meaning, that they have not only the link, but the text to accompany it. And so with all of the materials and resources that are provided in the course, those are the things that we have to be aware of. And not many people think, well, text to speech and speech to text. Well, I don't have any blind students. I don't have any hearing impaired students. But in fact, you may, because many of us have visual challenges. Many of us, for example, may break your glasses and you want to read something, or you may, for some reason, have a cold and your ear is clogged. So it's really accessible to everybody, regardless of whether or not you have a disability.
Yeah, thank you. Well said. Dr. Terribility or Dr. Hans?
Yeah, I'll say that for me, the way that Quality Matters supported was mostly through just enlightening me to many more challenges that I maybe had not thought through in depth and now was made aware of. There was many tools that they brought up, tools that I had known how to use but didn't think about in applying. So for example, we talked about opening up and reading through the HTML, CSS to look at your headings and make sure that your headings make sense as you're going through a course, and how that kind of alignment can help. I think things like that, and just being made aware of utilizing these already useful tools in these situations.
Yeah, definitely. And Dr. Hans?
So without a doubt, one of the biggest changes that happened between the first time I went through the Quality Matters course and the second one was the sophistication of auto captions on YouTube. You won't be surprised to know, teaching a lot of film and journalism classes, we are very, very heavy users of YouTube. And it has only been in about the last 2 to 3 years that the auto captions of YouTube were becoming, although probably aren't completely compliant with ADA requirements under the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So I remember in the past when I sent courses through the Quality Matters review process that, and I think it's a required standard that your materials be compliant for ADA. And I do occasionally get a surprising number of students that are deaf and hard of hearing. And I think this is an example of the technology catching up and Quality Matters being pretty adaptive to that. That's just one particular form of accessibility. And it's funny, I kind of agree with Dr. Terribility that, I'm a sort of a font and graphic design geek, and I know that it is more important to make sure that you're using different heading settings than it is that you're using different sizes of fonts. If you're going to put something that's going to be printed, go hog wild and do your spiffy Danish modern graphic design. But if it's going to be deployed almost exclusively online, which some of my courses are, you need to use the HTML heading. And that took a lot of getting used to. And again, Quality Matters in the annotations, actually, and we should talk about these. In those annotations, they provide a lot of specifics beyond just the standard in those annotations, the different specifics that are really good. That's all accessibility. Inclusivity is a little different. I also have a tendency to, in our program, I don't know, maybe it's just media. We tend to have a lot of people who don't have like physical disabilities, but are, you know, on autism spectrums and whatnot. And that designing courses that oftentimes the accessibility helps lead into inclusivity. I think, I'm not sure. Again, some of these I haven't really rolled out yet, but I think generally once students see accessibility in the course, they tend to feel more included in the course, but we'll see.
Yeah, and even the images that you're using throughout your course, right, including more inclusive images, people of color, things like that, especially for our student base, right? Those are things that we can keep in mind. And I know, Dr. Hunt, I feel like we've had this conversation before about, you know, generative AI and, you know, the images that produces that are not inclusive, right? So that's another conversation, but I know that's something that we've been keeping in mind as well with the growing use of AI, especially on campus.
Yeah, we've been really lucky to have Megan Kowalski, who has a media production and studies background, who somewhere in the LRD website has compiled a list of like clip art, stock photography, and news organizations that are just sort of more inclusive generally, and with frankly people that look more like our students, so that when our students start making, whether it's videos or PowerPoint, they look like what our students look like. And I guess that's a form of inclusivity that I don't think is exactly captured in the Quality Matters rubric. But again, a focus on accessibility tends to lead toward better inclusivity, and I guess that's been a nice upside.
Yeah, and speaking of Megan, she recommended this website called nappy.co. I put that in the chat box, but this is a great website for stock images that are more inclusive, right? And this is something that I use all the time after she told me about a great resource for everyone here, right? Julian, anything that you would like to add?
Just kind of on the accessibility front first, I kind of got a chance to peep back into this, and you all brought up great points. I think the piece about coloring on your online screen and want to have this design lens, but realizing some colors are inaccessible. I think we had that conversation about our UDC colors, that red and yellow are inaccessible colors, but those are our colors, so it's kind of hard to incorporate them in certain fashions. And just one specific instance about accessibility that we were working on an accounting course and realizing that even Excel sheets have to be accessible, and that, you know, merged tables and different functions like that are considered inaccessible for some students. So going back and really diving into that has really broadened a lot of my lens and my practices as far as looking at artifacts and making sure that either they're scanned documents, that they're OCR, or that the tables are merged in certain tables. It's just, it really helped open up my eyes and make sure that my students are having a great opportunity to succeed in that.
Yeah, thank you, Julian.
I wanted to add that
yeah, go ahead.
I really try to make sure that students know how to prepare their documents and their PowerPoints so that they are accessible. And one thing that's pretty easy is that on Microsoft Office PowerPoint, you can utilize that captions feature. So I try to show them how to produce documents and make sure that they do it when they submit things to me, that they're accessible. So that's one of the other things that was a benefit from the QM training.
Yeah, and you know that brings up, even for this Zoom meeting, if you do want to enable the captions, you have that ability to do that as well. So when you are doing an online class or distance learning class, either using WebEx, Teams, or Zoom, using that captions feature and as well, right? So let's go ahead and move on to the next question about balance. Maintaining a balance between academic rigor and interactive learning experiences is a delicate task. Could you share insights into how you achieve this balance? And how has Quality Matters played a role in shaping your instructional approach? And I know that question has many layers, so feel free to take your time with that. Yeah, Dr. Hahn?
All right, yeah, you see that might go off. And so I have always tried to focus first and foremost on rigor, sometimes to the unfortunate exclusion of other things. That's because I know the competition our students are up against the moment they finish their bachelor's degree. However, at the same time, a lot of the things that students create, particularly in media, but in pretty much any BA in the humanities and even some bachelor's of science, you have to be able to make an objective statement about a subjective thing and be rigorous. Inside of that, that is where interactive learning experiences happen. Once you give students enough of the vocabulary, whether it's from a rubric or from an assignment or heck, the reading, they have the ability to comment on their own work and other students' work. And that, I think, is a good so peer feedback becomes an important part of learning experiences, particularly in the upper level classes, where students are generating what is hopefully professional level work. And there is where you can have a balance between academic rigor and interactive learning experiences. One of the reasons why I'm here, in this particular thing, is figuring out how to make the rubrics that we peg to our assignments more meaningful with like words students can use so that they can be both rigorous and interactive at the same time. And I think, and I've already forgotten which standard this is, I think it's in standard 2 or 3 in Quality Matters, where that there's a little logo of alignment next to many of the standards in Quality Matters. And a lot of times that little alignment logo is where you're getting those student learning outcomes across the assignments. And that, I think, is where Quality Matters helps.
Excellent. Yeah. Dr. Kingberry?
I think about, I train teachers. And so therefore I have to model how to make sure that there's a balance between rigor and the learning experience. So I expect them to do the same in their development of lesson plans, which is really a key here. How to develop lesson plans and make sure that you reach the academic standard, but yet have it meaningful and engaging and enjoyable. Not just to say, I want you to write a paragraph on something, but maybe make it more personal, let them utilize different forms of media in order to express it. So it's really a way of engaging students in this process of balance and rigor.
Excellent. Well said. Dr. Tarbaletti, anything to add?
Yeah, I'll actually say that in sciences and chemistry in particular, we actually, I think to some extent, unfortunately, divide these a lot. We often have very much this lecture and lab component in which interactive experiences are really like kind of shoehorned into the lab. That's the lab experience. And then lecture is really focused, hardcore on this rigor. And I think that in doing this Quality Matters, I actually step back a bit more at the kind of program level thought in merging these a little bit together, but also just aligning those classes more so. So even if they're going to stay divided, to try to align them so that as students are going through them, these interactive experiences and kind of more rigorous experiences are joined hand in hand more so, instead of maybe being completely unaligned and not really making sense with each other.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. So moving on to the next category of student engagement and metrics, right? So I know student engagement has been an issue, during COVID, post-COVID, right? So I know this is a big point here. So effective student engagement is a key aspect of online and blended learning. What specific strategies have you found most impactful in engaging students, and how do these align with the standards set by Quality Matters? And, thinking about student engagement from our end, right? I know with the high flex modality, thinking about how do we get more students to come in person, right? Using immersive learning experiences, that could be one. What are the educational technology tools that we offer here at UDC that can help to increase that student engagement? I know Dr. Hunt talked about that peer review or that peer-to-peer type of discussion, right? Using Hypothesis, which is that social annotation tool that can annotate even YouTube videos now, JSTOR articles, documents from your class. That could be a way that you can increase that student engagement using that tool that can help you meet those quality matter standards. Right? Dr. Hunt, anything that you would like to add to that?
Just funny because I was skeptical of Hypothesis, and then I've used it in one particular class that has an open source textbook. It has worked out really well, and I'm going to be doing that again in January. So thanks for the reminder. Oh God, this is really tough because, by the way, this goes for traditional on-campus courses as well.
Mm-hmm.
Students can check out just as well, largely by looking at their phone during class, as they can in a high flex class or an online class. Generally, the more sort of concrete, specific, and imaginative the assignment or the content is, the more students will engage with it, because it'll prick something in their memory. It'll engage their curiosity. And you said, so what, the standards here is in 2.2 in Quality Matters, that's the module and unit level objectives are things that are measurable and consistent with the course level objectives. I think when this may even be almost like subliminal for students, when they realize that what they're doing in week 4 kind of connects with what the whole class is about, and they can see how it's relevant to them. And that I think is where Quality Matter standards can help, even if students are completely unaware of them.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Dr.
And then like the cool technologies help you do that better.
Yeah.
Right. But help you do that better. But you set you set the foundation when you're getting your class ready for Quality Matters review, and then the individual tools kind of fit into it in the right places. Whether it's and then of course we've extended this even outside of classes. We kind of do this when we have student film screenings and guest lectures, because when they see that that's also pegged back to what they're supposed to learn for each class, they'll show up even when they don't have to come to class.
You got it, right, Dr. Kingberry?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that for many of my engagement activities, I ask my students, how do you want to engage with other students? And a lot of them utilize Google. They love Google Docs, Google whatever. They use that a lot to engage with one another, which really helps when it comes from them.
Well said. And, this discussion of tools that, we use or we integrate in our classes, I always tell faculty members, it should really add value to your course and not become a distraction. I love all these tech tools myself, but I have to think what would work well for this specific professor in their context or in their use case that's not going to be overwhelming for both them and their students, right? So really thinking intentionally about what we add in our courses. So moving on to the next question, it's measuring the effectiveness of online and blended courses is essential. What metrics do you utilize to evaluate student learning outcomes? And how do you ensure alignment with Quality Matters assessment criteria?
Often I utilize the rubrics, which are designed specifically to be aligned with the objectives. So that probably has been the most effective measurement. Of course, you have your tests, etc., but making sure once again that they are aligned with the objectives. And I think the key really is the alignment of everything in the course.
Thank you, Dr. Kingberry. Dr. Hunt?
Yeah, so to be honest, without a doubt, this is where we are still at our weakest, right? Just the measuring of effectiveness. So sometimes we will, at the end of a semester, send a survey. We'll try to link things in assignments back to SLOs. And I see that's the beginning of what Quality Matters is looking for here. But this is probably the hardest thing to do, I think, the assessment and measurability. Because again, regardless of the class, you're kind of trying to make an objective statement about a subjective experience. And both we as faculty and our students may not even know the actual impact of a course until like you get into a upper level course, or you're actually doing something in the field, or maybe you have a job, so on like a semester by semester time frame, this is really tough to do. It's not impossible, but I think it's tough. And I do think Quality Matters offers, again, down in the annotation section, some good sort of guide rails to doing this. And it's something that we could probably work a little better on, particularly as we're like coming up to accreditation. We want to see this sort of thing. And we do it, but I think we could do better.
Yeah, and speaking of this, there is a tool, an EAC visual data tool that I want to highlight. I will put our YouTube channel link in the chat box at the end of the workshop, but I do want to talk about our next EAC webinar. This will be led by Dr. April Massey, the Interim Chief Academic Officer. That will be on December 7th, so let me go ahead and put that link. But she will be talking about really harnessing this data to optimize your teaching portfolio. So that will be a great webinar to attend. You can also look at some of our other webinars that we've had in the past about that EAC visual data assessment tool. Right? Okay, so talking about collaboration and emerging trends, collaboration among faculty and instructional designers is integral to course improvement. And we have both Grace and Julian on the call today. How do you actively collaborate to enhance course quality, and in what ways has Quality Matters facilitated this collaborative process for you? And Grace or Julian, if you also want to chime in and add anything about this collaborative process working with faculty, feel free.
Yeah, Phil, I haven't had much experience on this quite yet, but from the meetings I have attended, what I've realized is that there's a lot of positive back and forth, which is kind of nice because this process is not overnight for most people. So just getting the chance every couple of weeks to check in and kind of see how people are doing, how their courses are coming along is super beneficial. And I think new things are learned every time those meetings happen. And so just patience and chugging along, I guess, is my takeaway.
Well said. Thank you. Julian?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. I think I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of you in different faculty in the capacity of designing courses. And I think it takes both sides to be very open and transparent about what is our end goal in this process. What kind of course do we want to build? What do we want students to be able to do at the end of the course? And how do we want to assess this? And I think when we start there, it allows us to kind of create and build around that using that kind of backwards design model. As far as course quality and just ensuring that it's easy to navigate and it's accessible, I do think it takes both parts to be really diligent in how we both review the course, whether it's faculty and the content and the videos that you are embedding in the course, whether it's the designer and kind of being able to see what things we can use to supplement and also kind of help building the structure out. I think it's just both of us really having a great conversation, a great dialogue between us of how we can really make the best course for your students. And like I said, it's all about openness. I think when I've worked with multiple faculty, we realizing that we are both throwing our ideas out there, not really trying to one up each other, but just trying to build the best overall course. And that I'm here to provide constructive feedback for you. You're here to provide constructive feedback for me. And all of this is just for our UDC students. None of this is for us to kind of brag or boast about to each other. It's just more for our students to be successful. And that has led to great collaboration I've had working with a lot of faculty.
Yeah, this collaborative community that we have here at UDC, it's super positive, and we learn from each other throughout this process, right? Dr. Hanf, anything?
Oh yeah, so I'm actually a big cheerleader for engaging with instructional designers to my faculty colleagues. So here's the thing: the very job of instructional designer is still new. I mean, certainly relative to like a college professor, right? That's been around for hundreds of years. Instructional designers is still a new idea, and it is, as far as I can tell, Grace and Julian can tell you better than I can. I think it's a really fun sounding job, right? However, you've been to college, you know, college professors. They're like, no, this information is mine, and the idea of allowing someone else to help you design and deploy it, like, I'm pretty, I like working with technical people, but there will remain resistance to this for a while. It's a pity, but it's true. I think when faculty see other faculty making really compelling content that they can deploy online together with instructional designers, they'll open up to it. Because again, these are all the things you don't know, right? Again, like, your content area really well, but do you really want to have that many discussions in the class, discussion boards in the class? Do you really want to have them watch the entire film and then write? So these are things that instructional designers can help faculty learn. Faculty can help instructional designers kind of right size things to different disciplines, because I know different disciplines are super, super different. Where I think quality matters figures into this is a framework. It's because they're providing a sort of outsiders, like, they're not with our university, they're not like appointed by the dean. They're an outside nonprofit who we all sort of assume have our best interests at heart. You say, oh, okay, let's build curriculum to these standards because it seems to be what's working really well, in my discipline and in different universities.
Very good point.
Add
Dr.
that
Kingsbury?
teacher educators have been designing courses and lessons for years. The difference is that Quality Matters has given us an opportunity to put this online, to have more, even though we have engagement in the classroom, to engage online, to collaborate with other professors who may not be at UDC. And that was really very enlightening for me, be able to discuss and interact with people from other universities. But I think at the university, we have quality support from the Quality Matters staff, David and Julian and Fatma. I mean, if there's anything that I need, and I think I can design pretty good, but I'm telling you, they give me the tools that I need to enhance my courses.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Dr. Taraboletti?
I just also wanted to add that I think that Quality Matters also gives faculty the same footing and kind of the language to then interact better with instructional designers. And I think that's really where, for me, it facilitated this, because now you're kind of on the same page and you can have these conversations so much better by having Quality Matters.
Yeah, it provides that framework, and some people think that framework is super rigid, but you have that creativity within the framework to really make sure that the course really reflects your teaching style as well. Thank you. So, go ahead.
No problem. I just kind of want to add that I think that the collaboration piece, as faculty, you can kind of get into that silo of doing things by yourself, but having a sounding board for, hey, I have this idea. This was an assessment I want to use with my students. What do you think of this? And, oh, hey, well, I think maybe we should tailor it like this, and then I think it'll fit best for our students. Just kind of having that sounding board to go back and forth with really is helpful. It's always great to have a partner with you building courses.
Excellent. And as we close out our session today, let's end with a talk about compliance and advice. So my first question is, maintaining compliance with policies and regulations is paramount. How do you ensure that your courses align with relevant requirements? And how has Quality Matters supported your efforts in staying up to date with these standards?
First of all, the training will give you the policy requirements. And so by getting QM certified, I mean, just participating in the training and getting your courses QM certified, you can make sure that you are in compliance. And that's exactly what the QM training offers.
Excellent. Dr. Taraboletti or Dr. Hans?
I think Dr. Kingberry said it perfectly. Mostly for me, it was via the training. That's how it really has supported my efforts, because now I have the tools to stay up to date.
Yeah, that foundation, Dr. Hans.
So God, when we none of the faculty went into teaching because of compliance, but it's still important, right? And here's the crazy thing: in order to be compliant for an online or hybrid course requires so much more time. However, these things can be applied back to your traditional face-to-face courses. And one of the interesting things about the pivot back from COVID is that we are taking a lot of the things that we all had to do for emergency remote instruction and for QM review of courses, and we are beginning to bring it back into the real world. But where this becomes the most interesting, and where I think there's some great growth in this, is when you design a course for Quality Matters, and you know it's going to be taught back on campus, and possibly by an adjunct or visiting professor. If you set it up a lot using the Quality Matters standards, you can be pretty well assured that when you pass that course, whether it's the Blackboard shell or the syllabus and with a bunch of assignments, you can be pretty well assured that it would be compliant regardless of the mode that it was being deployed through. I think it's one of like the really unsung parts of using Quality Matters.
Definitely. And whichever modality that you're teaching from, Blackboard is that LMS, that central hub that we're always using. And as long as you have followed those Quality Matters standards and that structure, just like Dr. Hans said, it'll be a successful course. Okay, so let's round out and end out our session today. Great discussions throughout. For faculty considering Quality Matters certification, what advice would you offer to encourage their engagement with the process? And how can we inspire more faculty to pursue this valuable certification? And remember, CAL will cover the cost. Dr. Hans?
All right, so here's the thing. It is a portable credential, right? So now, again, it's like, UDC as alma mater is helping us as its faculty get certified for QM. However, you can then use this as a consultant, doing peer review somewhere else, helping build courses, both here and somewhere else. That is something for the faculty that are resistant to it. That's a pretty good selling point, and I think one that we should get to highlighting a bit more.
Well said. Dr. Kingberry?
Yeah, I would like to add that for faculty who feel stressed and overwhelmed, especially at this time of the semester, if you put in the time up front, if you have all of your objectives, your assessments, your materials, everything set up at the beginning, it relieves so much stress. And not only does it benefit you and relieve stress, it also benefits the students, because they will know at the beginning of the semester exactly what's expected of them, when they need to do it. All of that is laid out for them. So this course will provide great stress relief.
Excellent. I love to hear it. Dr. Taraboletti?
Yeah, and speaking of the students, I would also note, not only does it relieve stress, I think it gets more student engagement as well. So by going through this process, having this set up, I think we're going to be able to engage students more and better in the long run.
Yeah, and you'll have fun while you teach as well, right?
Yes.
That makes a huge difference. So I want to thank again the faculty that have joined our call today, Dr. Kingberry, Dr. Taraboletti, Dr. Hans, Julian and Grace, thank you so much for your time and consideration today. If you do have any questions for us as a follow-up, if you look at the chat box, our main email is calhelpdesk@udc.edu. For any questions that you may have or follow-ups, or if you want to meet with us for a consultation about what you can add to your course or how to get started with Quality Matters, please send us an email. We have our Cal YouTube channel. I did mention the EAC visual reporting tool earlier. If you look on our Cal YouTube channel, just search for EAC. We have a series of webinars. I also put the link for Dr. Massey's webinar on December 7th, if you can join that. And last but not least, please fill out our survey. I put that survey link in the chat box. This will really help to shape our future PD sessions, as well as what we can do to improve. But this has been a great, fantastic webinar, really enriching discussions. I would love to do this, every so often throughout the semester. So thank you again, everyone. Any final thoughts from the faculty here today? But stay warm. I know it's getting cooler. Happy holidays, everyone, and we hope to see you very soon. Bye-bye.